if push comes to shove and you have no idea what the camera was that was used to shoot a plate, you can use the 3D camera tracker to try to figure out the field of view. The only real caveat here is that the plate must have enough parallax in it, and by that I mean enough moving planes that can be tracked successfully by the camera tracker to create a reasonably solid 3D solve. So we don't want to track the talent here in the shot, so I've created a quick GMAT and copied it in here, and that will be used to exclude him from the solve. The node we need to use is called CameraTracker, so I'm hit tab and start typing CameraTracker. And let's go through some of the basics here. This isn't going to be an in-depth CameraTracker tutorial. This is more of a Hail Mary automatic track, see if we get lucky kind of thing. So we know that we have a free camera because of the rocking and rolling through the plate here. And we don't know the lens. And we really don't know the film back preset. But I do recall that it was a small camera, so chances are it wasn't this big. So let's put it something closer to the ballpark from one of these presets. And I'll just use film as a point of reference. Super 35, because that's the same aspect ratio in this case. So now I have a sensor that's probably bigger than the actual sensor of this little digital camera that was used to shoot this, but at least it's in the ballpark and the aspect ratio is correct. Now the lens that the camera tracker comes up with will be relative to this film back size. And that's pretty much it. The only other thing might be to increase the amount of features to track. So I'm going to turn on preview features, and I'm going to make sure that I'm masking him out. See, that's the first thing I noticed. I've forgotten to turn my mask on. So mask, source alpha, and now the talent is being excluded from the solve. Go back to settings, and I'll just turn this up a little bit more to grab a few more points. And I'll say refine feature locations. That'll make it snap to corners a little bit more. And I think that's good to go. Free camera motion, yep. We're just going to go with the defaults otherwise, so I'll hit track. Nuke will track forward and then backwards. Okay, that took about a minute and a half, and it looks like it got a lot of features. It tracked all of these sticks in the scene, so chances are it's going to be able to do a pretty good solve. To solve it, we just check the solve button, click the solve button. And it's reporting an error of 0.7, which is pretty good for a quick and dirty track like this. I'm not going to bother fixing it because we don't really need a 3D camera track. We just need to get the field of view of the camera. So now, to create a camera, we can just say create camera. We select what we want to create. We only really need a camera here. So create camera. And if you want the camera to be free floating, you can turn off link output and it will generate a camera that is standalone. There we go. So let's look at this camera, see what we got. And by default, it will also copy the animation into the camera, which if you're only going to use it for a tile world, you don't need any of the animation. So what I would do is I would go to the first frame and say no animation on all knobs, and that will kill all the animation curves. And you might want to reset translation and rotation to 0 if you're going to use it in tile world setup. And you'll get the focal length. This seems pretty reasonable. That's probably what it was given the size of this sensor. And the field of view seems pretty reasonable based on being there. So that's how you can use the 3D camera tracker to sort of reverse engineer the field of view of a lens when you don't have a lot of information about what's going on. This can also be used for figuring it out on smartphones and point and click cameras or small video cameras that it can be tricky to figure out the size of the sensor. And I just want to reiterate that in order for this to work, you've got to have the right kind of shot, and that is to say a shot like this one that has parallax in it. And obviously they'll have to have a shot that is moving even if you're just trying to figure out the field of view for a lens or a camera that you're going to use for a still shot for a tile world. So if the tile world tiles were shot on a locked off tripod one at a time, this technique's not going to work for you, obviously. So it's more for situations where you have control, let's say, of the camera long enough that you can go out and shoot a little moving plate that you can use to figure out the focal length of the camera. And another thing worth mentioning is if you are using a little point and shoot camera, and we'll use this virtual camera as the example, it's most likely going to have some kind of zoom lens on it. So if you are zooming around constantly while you're shooting your different tiles or plates, you're never going to be able to figure out what your focal length was at any given time when you go and do this trick later. So my suggestion would be when you shoot plates with a little point and shoot camera that you may have difficulty getting the information from the metadata, shoot at full wide or full telephoto or some known focal length that you just leave at the same fixed focal length for the whole session, and make sure that you capture your little moving plate while you still have it at that focal length so that you can reverse engineer the field of view after the fact.